Were either of you exposed to Crofty's breakfast?
You really need to take changes of clothes, don't you?
Well, boff, try that for your luck.
I don't bloody believe it.
Well, your papaya rules, they didn't work very well for your tail, did they?
I just feel like with Georgie, he's just going from strength to strength.
You taking credit for that? Okay.
With Anthony Davidson, yes.
With Anthony Davidson?
Well, it was me and Anthony. It was me and Anthony Davidson.
Good. Hello everybody, welcome one and all to the latest F1 show sponsored by Audi, in which we're going to digest the major talking points, well, probably the main talking point from the Singapore Grand Prix, one in which McLaren retained their World Constructors Championship, but was overshadowed by the collision of, or the coming together of the two drivers on lap one, turn three, in which George Russell stormed to a fifth career win. Max showed that the Red Bull is now a car quick in low and high downforce settings, and where Fernando Alonso broke the world swearing record over team radio. And we'll do that with the help of Ted Kravitz and Jamie Chadwick. We're all, well, some are fresh off the plane. I say fresh, I'm not fresh, but I'm off the plane at least and back. How was your Singapore, Jamie?
I love Singapore. It's one of my favourite races, so it's always good. I always feel like I'm incredibly sweaty. I feel like there's a million hours in the day in Singapore because we'd work on these offset time schedules, but I'm a morning person, so I still like to get up early in the morning, which never works for me at Singapore. But other than that, I enjoyed it a lot, and I think the race maybe lacked a little bit of excitement, but qualifying and the rest of the weekend was very, very exciting.
It's true. There are like 28 hours in a day, aren't there, Jamie? I don't know why. Yeah. It's with the most odd thing. I got the most sleep at a racetrack I think I've ever got. I was getting sort of 8-9 hours a night, going to bed at 4 a.m., but then getting up at 2 p.m. And that's 8, isn't it, Simon? Yeah. And getting and it was, I felt, fresh as a daisy. Yes, it was hot, but it didn't seem. Who was it who said it didn't seem hotter? One of the drivers said in an interview, it didn't seem hotter as in previous years. I think it was
George, wasn't
quali. Was it George?
I don't think it was as hot as previous years. I agree with that.
No, but it was still very humid. But yeah, nice weekend.
Still got through about 30 pairs of socks. I won't get into the rest of it, but you really need to take changes of clothes, don't you?
Yes. What were you going to say, Jamie? Was I what?
I was going to say, were either of you exposed to Crofty's breakfast at the weekend?
Now, look, we weren't because he got up a little earlier, but we understand what Crofty's breakfast looked like, and suffice to say, you can have. I mean, he can literally visit almost every cuisine in the world as he goes round the continent on the buffet. And you get that opportunity, don't you, at our hotel?
Well, I think we should probably, to be fair to Crofty, explain. Sorry, Jamie, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because of these offset timings, we're obviously having breakfast at sort of 1-2 p.m. But for Crofty, it was a perfect opportunity to combine a lunch and a breakfast. So you'd have hash browns with butter chicken on top of it, which for the first thing you're going to eat in the day was slightly alarming.
Yes, because in his defence, the hotel that we're staying at doesn't like to put on a separate breakfast for us F1 idiots who are having breakfast between 2 and 4 p.m. So what they do is that they put it all in the lunch buffet, and very nice lunch buffet it is. So one corner of the lunch buffet is breakfast stuff. So it's hash browns, poached eggs, baked beans, chicken sausage, and some bacon. But then on the other, about the 8 other food stations, they have a carvery. They have the curry corner. They have fresh lobster and crab. They have sushi. Then they have the nasi goreng and the sambal and all of that. And then so you do have about 85 options for your breakfast. So in Crofty's, I only made it down to breakfast one day, but in his defence, I can see what the attraction is if you want a varied culinary breakfast.
Jamie, we've seen it all before. All right. I mean, I like the fact that with fresh eyes on it, it can look harrowing, but suffice to say that the big man gets through it. We understand that. And if you're listening, Crofty, sorry, But it is a one of the wonders of the world. Right, okay. Shall we get on with it then? That's enough about about Crofty's breakfast. So many questions, by the way, and we will get to some of those today. Of course, on Lando barging through his teammate Oscar, obviously getting himself. It was the first time we've really seen him flustered over team radio. It was almost like he wanted that place back. Calm down at the end. We'll move the conversation on. But Jamie, I think we were all in agreement, weren't we, post-race, or at least every pundit that we spoke to, every guest that we spoke to seemed to think, as did the stewards, that it was a race one incident. That's not necessarily the case, though, with all the Oscar Piastri fans. Discuss.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, in my opinion, lap one incident. If it was two non-McLaren cars against each other and you had a Charles Leclerc on the outside, I don't think anyone would think anything beyond it. I think what Oscar's trying to play on or try and lean on is this Papaya rules, which we don't know the extent of the details within it, but he's been, given a position, or he's been given Lando a position back earlier in the year for something within those rules, and so he's probably trying to sort of understand where does him feeling like he's being pushed off or hit by Lando fall into those. I think he'll look back at it and go, I think Lando actually put it himself, I would have done the same in that situation. It was a bit clumsy, hit the back of Max and tapped his teammate, but out of everything that happened in that whole melee of turn one, it could have been a lot worse for Oscar. He could have actually ended up in the wall, which fortunately he didn't. I think he'll look back at it and think, okay, that's fine, but he's still, in the back of his mind, will hate the fact that he's lost points to Lando this weekend, because he outqualified him. He was a race win ahead. Now he's lost that kind of race win points deficit. And now's when the pressure mounts. I think if this was earlier in the year, again, like I say, I don't think they would have thought too much of it. And the other thing I would also mention is, maybe, not sure if Oscar knew about the radio messages internally, but he got quite a stern warning when he was getting punchy in Austria, racing Lando. And I'm not sure if Lando got a warning at all from the pit wall. So I'm wondering whether he's just making sure that he feels like everything is balanced throughout the whole year, even with all the Papaya rules.
Well, that's it. It's about balance, isn't it, Ted? I mean, if you go back and look at the kind of coming togethers, or at least the incidents on track, but between the pair this year, Canada, Norris trying to overtake Piastri, crashing in the process. Silverstone, where there's a 10-second penalty for Oscar after the restart, crosses the line first. Lando wins. Hungary, Lando's put on another strategy to beat Oscar, which plenty of people have questioned. Everything that happened in Monza with the toe, and then Oscar being told to let Norris pass after he'd led and had that slow pit stop. And then this one. The thing is, the problem is that they've created a set of rules here, the Papaya rules, that no doubt is well-intentioned, but are going to create their own set of issues and contradictions, aren't they? And we've discussed this all season, but this is just another example where Oscar feels unfairly done by, and perhaps the balance of luck has swung more in Lando's favour.
Yes, and I think this is the one that's going to tip them into actually having to abandon the not the Papaya rules, which just says don't crash into each other, but the consequences that happen after that. I think now they're just going to have to leave that alone, because Oscar could just about live with the Hungary Lando one-stop strategy, because he was already behind and they were sort of worried about Leclerc, and Oscar did the 2 and Lando did the 1, and then he could just about understand that. He could just about live with the Monza, can you swap back please, because he had a bad pit stop because he was so far ahead in the points. I think now it's got to the point that he can't really accept it anymore, because Lando, it seems that on the face of it, what we're inferring from what they're saying is that Lando broke the Papaya rules, which is that you don't hit each other. And it seems from inferring what Oscar's saying is that the agreement was that if someone does break the Papaya rules, that will be remedied by the team on track, and that the other person will get to go in front of the person who broke the Papaya rules. And that did not happen. Now, of course, for us watching, and this is the problem with the Papaya rules, this is motor racing, and it wasn't the most egregious knock into your teammate, was it? It was a little bit of a bump, and yes, he put him towards the wall, and yes, it could have had more serious circumstances, but, it wasn't the worst thing we've ever seen. And for then, had they swapped them back, and ordered Oscar past Lando, I think that would have created. I wouldn't have liked that. That would have seemed unnecessary manipulation in a Grand Prix for me, just as a fan watching. But if Oscar had been promised that was the deal, that was the team deal, then he has a right to feel pretty aggrieved about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, isn't it? That's where we're left.
Yeah, I mean, not all the Oscar fans are saying, Jamie, you know, if that had been the other way round, Oscar would have been asked to give the place back.
That's what Oscar fans will say. Lando fans will say the opposite. You know, that's the nature of the sport. You have your driver that you support, and you fully want everyone else to support that person, whether it be the team, the fans, everyone else. And I think that's part of what makes sport divisive and interesting to watch. At the same time, I think McLaren almost trying to be too fair all the time. They're trying so hard to keep it equal between the pair of them that's what's caused this kind of situation where Oscar, and I can't actually blame him, to be honest, for on the radio making these calls to try and get the position back, because you've got to play the system. You've got to work with everything you've got. And he knows there's a system in place. And Oscar's smart, like very smart in the car. And he'll know that if I can play the system to work for me, that's, you know, potentially more points I can get. So he's using the situation he's in. I think, like I say, he'll look back at it and move on and not think too much of it. But at the same time, they've almost trying to be fair. They've created this sort of situation that seems almost, some people think is biased one way or the other. I think what I want to see now is kind of the rules put to the side. Obviously, they can't be taking each other out, but I cannot wait to see them go wheel to wheel. Now that the potential situation allows for that, you know, they say that it's allowed for that the whole year through, but equally it hasn't been crunch point in the season with the championship. But now it's going to get to crunch point and we're going to get to the last few races and they are going to be wheel to wheel for a championship. I'm excited to watch that and I'm excited to see how that kind of falls into place.
I mean, these theories, Simon, about whether it's nationality or anything else, that people favour the other things, it just doesn't stand up over the balance of a season, because it's so much earlier season was to do with qualifying, wasn't it? That Oscar was just simply out qualifying Lando, starting ahead of him, and then winning the race, and so it just doesn't stand up. I mean, the other one I've heard is that McLaren, because Lando has been there longer, is somehow sort of the favoured driver, because Oscar's only been there for 3 years and Lando's been there for longer. They feel like they'd like Lando to win the championship just because he's been there longer. Well, that's hardly a reason. I mean, that just doesn't stand up either. I mean, it's down to the two. There's no evidence to suggest, and nothing that we've seen. And heaven knows, Simon, if we'd seen it and we'd got a sense that McLaren want one driver to win over the other, we'd be talking about it because we're journalists and that's a good story. We're just not seeing it. I just don't see that there is any of this. It's down to after Melbourne. So Melbourne was an interesting one because Lando won the race. Oscar spun and finished 9th. And so it was looking like, oh, great. Lando's, gonna great for Lando. He's going to be challenging for the championship and Oscar's going to have a hard time. After that, Oscar got his stuff together and then was stronger in qualifying and then closed that gap down. It was a 20... what's the difference between a win? Yeah, it was like a 23, 22 point gap, wasn't it? That Oscar closed down and then moved ahead, largely because he was getting qualifying right and Lando was struggling with the handling of the car. And so, it just doesn't really stand up, really.
Okay, well, I mean, you've had your say. Lots of people have written in, and it's been interesting to read everybody's points. United Realistic says let them race, but with Max still lurking in the background, any major mistakes by either, and you just know Max will take full advantage. That's the problem McLaren have. Ali Meek says bin the rule book, let them race hard and fight. It's what everyone wants. I biscuit Oliver. They've won it already. It should be shackles off to the end of the season now. Hannah has said each side runs as separate. No conferring, no asking, oh, would you mind this or that? Lando has his strategist and engineer. Oscar has his. Only way they can do this without it looking like they favour one or the other. Tom Flood, go for it. Neither driver wants contact, but rubbing is racing. I mean, everyone's saying the same. Is it going to have changed it now? Is it going to have stirred it up a bit more? Come on, Jamie, what do you think?
The only one question I have is so Lando was given the option on the pit stops. Oscar wasn't actually, I don't think, close enough in this instance, but Lando was given the option on the pit stops. If he let Oscar take the first pit stop because he felt that was better for his strategy, and then the same thing happened again with that second slow stop that we saw in Monza But this time it hurt Oscar, not Lando. What would they have done in that situation? That's the only thing that I would have been interested to see. Would Oscar have given the position back again, especially given the contact at lap 1? I don't think he would have done, and then that's all of it put to bed, and they're there to race for themselves, I think.
I think they will be. They will be racing. I don't think we need to worry, actually, because we've got, what have we got? 6 races left, and I think it's just going to be gloves off now. There will still be a Papaya rule, which is please don't knock into each other, but the penalties for such will not be, they just won't take any notice of it. And if they do knock into each other, then what do the pit wall have to lose? They've already won the Constructors. Yes, it will be embarrassing for them, but one of them will come off worse, and it will really hurt their Constructors Championship. But I can't, is Oscar Piastri the kind of person who will take revenge in a future race and sort of knock Lando into the wall and say, well, boff, try that for your luck, see how that works. But also, Simon, I wonder whether this goes to the Constructors chat, which I think we're probably going to get onto, which is that this is the new McLaren. And I've been thinking quite deeply about this. And the first time the new McLaren has won back-to-back Constructors championships since the old McLaren. The old McLaren was when, their first Constructors, 1974 through the 70s, and then Emerson Fittipaldi and James Hunt, Niki Lauda, Alan Prost, Ayrton Senna, even Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard under the Ron Dennis McLaren. And that, yes, they would have had the rules and that please don't knock into each other, but they certainly wouldn't have had any of these let's try and make it fair to each other by giving places back, and we're going to have a detailed discussion about that. Just wouldn't have happened in the old McLaren. And so in trying to be fairer in a new McLaren, the new, shall we call it the warm and cozy McLaren, not the kind of, rather more every driver for himself, old school Ron Dennis McLaren, if you want to put it that way, then I think that's part of them creating these problems for themselves in the way that they want to be nicey under the new McLaren. Is that unfair?
I don't think it's unfair. What I want to move on to those what Jensen said afterwards, and you take the issue of fairness out of it on this incident. What he did say was that the thing is, and the thing that will have annoyed Oscar the most, is that his teammate got the better of him there. And in terms of a move, the mental side of that move was more important than the gaining of 3 points. Would you agree with that, Jamie, actually, that there was something, more cerebral at play, if you like, on the subject of getting the move done when he had to get it done, because we know how difficult it is to overtake in Singapore?
I do agree. I don't personally think to Oscar's detriment, because I think Oscar, I know maybe recently questioned it a little bit, but I think the way his mindset is and the way he's able to bounce back and kind of compartmentalise, I think is his biggest strength, and something that means I don't think he'll think as much about it. But I think where it's very big positive is for Lando, because historically not the best first laps. His qualifying, he was frustrated with. He was fighting a bit of illness over the weekend as well. So that's obviously something that's tough for him, especially at Singapore. To then go from 5th to 3rd on lap 1 and do his teammate and do a pretty decisive move on his teammate, I think that's got a big sort of power play internally for him. And I think that's important. You know what he was like on Friday, where he was sort of down, talking about how he can't drive anymore, kind of the usual stuff that we hear sometimes from Lando. I think the confidence he can take from that is important. In terms of Oscar, I think he's very good at compartmentalising things. We saw him in the airport afterwards, and I said, tough weekend, and he went, no, just tough day. And I think that's the way he thinks. It's a tough day, write it off, onto the next. And yeah, hopefully he'll, for himself, bounce back and not be in that position with the door open in Austin.
But in a sense, Simon, it was only lucky that it was only between 3rd and 4th for Oscar. So once again, when things haven't gone Oscar's way, like in Baku, when Lando didn't win the race, he's only lost 3 points. And had Lando won the race, of course, the difference between 1st and 2nd is 7 points. So it hasn't been the end of the world for Oscar, points-wise. He's only down 3 points.
The other thing I was thinking about, and this is just going forward to the end of the season here with 6 races and 3 sprints, Jamie, still to come, is Tom Stallard, who's Oscar's race engineer, wandered past me as the rest of the team's celebrating. And he's very much thinking about his boy and his boy's race. He's an Olympian. I'm not saying anything about Will's side of the garage. I just wonder what it means, having someone. They're all competitive, super, super competitive. But you just know Tom Stallard. He has got that mentality of, right, we've got the lead. We've had a couple of bad weeks. We get back coaching his man back into it. That side of things. We say, yeah, there's no bias either side, but obviously both sides of the garage want their man to win it. So we've got to look at that as we go forward as well, that how important that each individual of the engineers and the mechanics are to their man in a battle is tight.
You're absolutely bang on. It's not just the two drivers going at it or head to head. It's the two sides of the garage going head to head. Both engineers will want to beat each other as much as anyone else. But I think, and I do feel like it's a bit unfair, a lot of the criticism McLaren gets because of the way that they try and sort of manage things. Because if you look above that, there's an organisation employing all of them. And at the end of the day, McLaren have won the Constructors joint earliest of any team. They've created an environment that you look at that team and you look at how they're working and the dynamic is very, very strong. That might change in years to come. It's not always that they're in this position where they're able to dominate so much. But I think they've done a very, very good job of creating, a team where they've got people working for each other, but they're also working for the team. Now we're looking at just the Drivers' Championship. It's going to be fun because I think you've got two drivers going at it. But like you say, you've got two sides of the garage now going head to head. And I think that's where it's going to get a little bit more exciting, not just in the drivers' minds.
Right, finally on McLaren then. Yeah, we've just been discussing for 25 minutes the incident and the power plays between the two protagonists here. They have just won the Constructors back-to-back for the first time since that stretch, 88 to 91. Well done. Hats off. They turned it around. It's not a dynasty when you win two, is it? They've got to leak into the next couple of years if it's going to be that. But nevertheless, what a magnificent achievement, Ted, for a team that has turned it around, as I said.
I know, poor McLaren. They won back-to-back Constructors Championships, and then it's all about, well, your Papaya rules, they didn't work very well for your team, did they? We've got to give them some credit. And we talk about the new McLaren. This is a team that has come through from, built their own. You remember how bad they were just a few years ago and how they've done it and the innovative car that they've come up with this year. And they absolutely deserve the success. And they're not racing, it's not like they've lucked into a new rules situation and they're against teams in transition. This is a Mercedes team who've just come out of an era of winning 8 in a row. This is a Red Bull team who've won 3 or 4 Constructors Championships in a row. They're up against good people, and they've beaten them all. And they should be shouting it from the rooftops, and I'm sure they will do. So Andrea Stella, Zach Brown, Rob Marshall, all the engineers there, the designers, Peter Prodrumu, all of his team, the aero team there. It's an innovative car, and they've wrapped it up by having two great drivers who are knocking in the points every week. And congratulations to them.
Congratulations from all of us. But also, I spoke to Zach for an extended period of time earlier this year, and he said the biggest challenge he's got now is not to break the band up. Because it's happened to all of the great teams in the past, Mercedes and Red Bull, is that when you're on top, people start to poach your best people. Jamie, I'm sure he's locked them all down contractually because he's got a very decent band of brothers at the moment and sisters.
Exactly, brothers and sisters. I like it. No, exactly. That's the thing, and that's where environment and culture within a team is very important. You can be winning, but the culture and the environment cannot be nice and not be somewhere that you want to come into work and you want to succeed and you want everyone to win. So I think that's what they do a very, very good job of. It's funny, you speak to most people that work there and they enjoy it and they're happy, and motorsport's a tough world for everyone. It's a huge amount of weekends away. It's a lifestyle. It's not a job a lot of the time. You are fully committed to being in a race team, and I think that's a very important thing that they need to keep harmony within, and that does also stem from the drivers and the dynamic between them and the rest of the team. So it's something they do a great job of. They need to keep that, and then also they need to keep on top. Everyone wants to win. No one wants to be always finishing at the back. So keeping on top is important as well.
Simon, do you think the new McLaren is a more chilled out place to work? Apparently, you're allowed to wear jeans there. Do you remember? Was it the first launch that you came to in 2012? And do you remember one of our sound guys was kicked out because he was wearing jeans?
I didn't know that.
And you weren't allowed to. You weren't allowed to wear jeans in the McLaren Technology Centre. I mean, Ron Dennis would never allow you to wear jeans, no. And I think you can now wear jeans. You know, as Jamie says, it's chilled out, bit of a more of a chilled out place. People respond to that, and maybe that's reflected.
It's the little things, isn't it? A lot of it comes from top down, and Zach's a pretty. He's actually. I mean, he needs to be serious when he's serious, but he can be quite a chill cat, and I think that's rubbing off on the rest of them. But they have the highest of standards. Well done to them. Okay, well, let's draw a line under that because we've got to talk about George Russell. So we'll take a short break. There's plenty of other stuff as well on Red Bull and Max and the Ferraris and some of those who had a very good race in Singapore as well. So don't go anywhere. Back in a couple of ticks. Quick word on our show partner, Audi. The philosophy of Audi Sport isn't just about winning races. It's about pushing boundaries. Everything learnt on the track goes straight into Audi's road cars, making them just as thrilling as they are refined. Take the Audi RS range, serious performance, but with a level of sophistication and refinement that doesn't need to be loud to make a statement. It's that perfect blend of power and precision wrapped in quiet luxury. Whether it's their powerful style or the RS Sports suspension with Quattro all-wheel drive for razor-sharp handling, Audi is constantly redefining the future of performance. Book a test drive today to experience the Audi RS range for yourself. Hello, welcome back to the F1 show sponsored by Audi. Right, let's pick it up on the race winner. Well done, George Russell. Fifth of his career. He was ill in Baku. Great turnaround there. Got himself ready for the most physically demanding of races, but then stacks it in practice on Friday. Nails qualifying, both laps in Q3, absolutely exceptional. Gets the banker in and then leads all the way from the front, Jamie. It was one of his best weekends, I think. He said that to us afterwards, didn't he?
Yeah, I would say so. Honestly, I just feel like with George, he's just going from strength to strength. He's really turning into this driver that previously super fast, Mr. Saturday, didn't always have the car to prove it, to now really, when he needs to delivering. And this weekend was sort of no exception of that. I think, to turn around the weekend from where he was on Friday to then set the 2 laps he did in qualifying was very impressive. But I think also it is worth noting Kimi Antonelli, and that car I think was in a good place, which I think they can take a lot of positives as a team from, because they really did not expect to be that fast in Singapore. Kind of inherently not a circuit that I think they thought would suit them. Temperatures often a contributor to that. So it is great that they managed to turn it around, not just for George winning the race, but Kimi had some really good pace, which I think helped push George more than maybe we realised behind the scenes.
Well, he said in the press conference afterwards, I feel ready to fight for a championship. I feel ready to take my next step. First step is to get the pen on paper, which we did try and force out of him, Jamie, but he pretended he couldn't hear us. It sounds like it's going to be done in days. There's no doubt about it now. There's no point getting into it. We're just trying to understand when he's going to sign. But if one of the cars gets a head start, if we have one of those years, new set of regulations where one goes ahead and perhaps it is Mercedes, if he gets the car now, you get the feeling that George, is easily ready for that next step, isn't he, Ted?
Yes, he is. But then I think, what should we deal with first? I think Jamie's right about the Antonelli. So he borrowed a setup trick, or at least a driving style trick, off Kimi Antonelli when George was watching on Friday when he wasn't able to drive. So credit to Kimi Antonelli, even though Antonelli felt that he should have had a podium maybe and fell away a bit after a bad start, which dropped him down. So he'll want to learn from that. Dropped him 2 places he never got up. The reason he's called Mr. Saturday, should we put our hands up here, Simon? It's Anthony Davidson and myself, I believe, who gave him the nickname and Mr. Saturday, because he was so good at qualifying. Okay. With Anthony Davidson, yes. Well, it was me and Anthony. It was me and Anthony Davidson. Good. I could blame Anthony Davidson completely, but because he was so good in qualifying. But it was qualifying that made it, wasn't it? It was qualifying that made it. and it was Max on the soft tyres, which cemented. So I think qualifying was probably 2/3 of the race won. And then Max on the soft tyres giving George the gap to basically pace himself at the front was the other third. So that was job done. And of course he's ready to fight for a championship. I don't think there's anyone at the front who really isn't ready to fight for a championship. So I don't know whether someone asked him and he just said, are you ready for a championship? He said, yes, I'm ready for a championship. I think with the contract thing, he's thinking, look, I might be ready for a championship. And if the Mercedes have the best car next year, he might be the 2026 world champion. Don't know what McLaren are going to have with the same power unit. We'll see. But then the worry is that if Toto Wolff's still burning desire for Max Verstappen in one of his cars comes in, would it be George that's moved aside? And that's the thing George wants to make sure doesn't happen in his contract for the next couple of years, which, we'll see what happens. Will it just be for 26 plus 1 plus an option for 27? Or does he get a solid 2-year, you're not moving me off for 2027 no matter what?
The crowd want to see it, and he said it himself. He said that he's happy to fight alongside anyone, be anybody's teammate. He said he's done it against Lewis Hamilton, therefore he's not scared of having Max Verstappen as his teammate. You spoke about Anthony Davidson there, Ted. I think the one thing that always strikes me about George is, and everybody, is just how prepared he is for every single occasion. Every time he goes out on track, the minutiae, the details. He was talking about these drain covers can cause you a lock-up on the shadows coming off certain corners where you can't see the apex. The fact that we know that he is, he's always looking to the future, different techniques to find those 1%ers, as all great athletes do. I wonder, Jamie, do you think he does it more than others? I mean, is that sort of obsessive nature? You know him, he's a friend of yours, but is he more obsessed than some of the others about all these little details, the finer things?
Yeah, I don't want to compare him to others because I think everyone has their way of working and differences that works for them, but I cannot express how impressive George is. I think I spend a lot of time with him, and every year he becomes more and more impressive, and he's evolving, maturing, developing, and with that becoming so much more aware of what he needs to work on and how he works on it. And he's got this intensity around racing because it's his life, it's everything he wants is to win a world championship, that kind of leads to this sort of hard-working nature. But it's not just in the car, it's outside of the car. Everything that he does now is very much centered around making sure that he can just be in the best position possible to win races. And I think as a human being, he's evolved a lot, he's learned a lot, and it's impressive. Like I say, you see it from within. And so when he does get results, as a friend and seeing him sort of flourish, you kind of take your hat off to him because you can see exactly where it stems from and where he's able to achieve that from.
If you look at his early record as well, his racing record coming through the ranks, he was not a crasher. And he's been on record as saying that it was his dad, and he was very exacting. His father would get extremely angry with him if he crashed in a race. And he said, often I wouldn't go for that gap if it just meant one position further, because I'd get in more trouble if I got crashed with my old man. And then, of course, he kind of handed over to the Mercedes driver program when he comes in, and Toto and Gwen Legru and that take over. And nowadays he said that he's prepared to take more risks. And I wonder if we've seen that in his driving, whether it's just something that perhaps didn't stand out at the beginning of his career, but now do you think he's more likely to go for everything? I mean, certainly those qualifying laps, he left nothing out there, did he?
We saw that qualifying Q3 lap 1, didn't we? When he hit the wall, and that was a risk. But what impressed me about George in Singapore was that he stepped up in qualifying, and we had Max, who was a bit annoyed with himself, and then he was annoyed with Lando at the end. We had Lando and Oscar, the car wasn't quite there, the Ferraris faded, and it was George who stepped up. And that's what Kimi wasn't quite there either. George stepped up and said, you know what? He took the scruff of the qualifying session by the neck, if I'm not torturing my metaphors there, and said, this is my time. I'm going to have this. Someone's going to be on pole here, and it's going to be me. And he did 2 laps which were good enough for pole. Yeah,
Jamie, just knowing him as you do, is that fair what I was saying about his early racing career and nowadays? I mean, I've had it from him. He's talked about that to me in the past. He
talks about, he didn't have like the easiest of, sort of junior careers and everything being handed to him. He had to work for it. I think what's impressive now, and I think this stems from what he was able to learn when he was younger, is sort of performing under pressure. And he's under a lot of pressure. He always is, but we are constantly as journalists asking him about his contract, what position he's in there. Was ill last weekend, and he's got to go out and perform on the line. And I think now he's able to develop into this driver that can kind of do it all. And I think we talk a lot about how Max is that kind of complete driver, but I do think George is coming into that. And there's this sort of category of racing driver that has got the ability to qualify, race wheel to wheel, not crash, perform under pressure. And there's very, very few of them at the moment, even though I think Formula One's in one of the most competitive places possible. But I would 100% put George up there in that category.
Well done, George. Yeah, great victory for him, 5th of his career. Now, Max Verstappen. He's made another little indentation into that lead. It's now 63 points behind Oscar Piastri. For us to win, we need to dominate. We didn't do that this weekend, was his quotes. He's gone from a 50-50 chance to, he's reneged a little bit on it, and I think he knows he needs to be nigh on perfect. But that Red Bull, I suppose the thing that struck us all from this weekend is that, okay, they've done it with all the downforce trimmed off at a couple of tracks. Now they've done it, or they're up there and fighting at a track, as you mentioned, like Mercedes, that they have not excelled in recent years in the past. They had that new front wing with the upper element, Ted, which was almost vertical, gave him the front end that he needed, and a car that now looks like it might be an all-rounder. Is it fair to say now? Can we say that?
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, while race pace, they looked not quicker than the McLarens when the McLarens had clear air. Certainly qualifying pace, they were quicker. Red Bull were quicker than the McLaren. Certainly in Max's hands, they'll be a bit concerned of what Yuki was able or was not able to do all weekend. But the reason Max is saying that we need to be perfect is that he understands the point system like the rest of us, is that it's 7 points the difference between first and second, and then it decreases from then on. You know, 3 points, 2 points here and there. I don't think he's still out of it just because he didn't win and get the 7 points over the McLarens. He's still going to be the disruptor. I love that he started on the soft tyre, trying to take the lead at the beginning, and had that worked, had he had a better start, then it could have been a very, very different race. And keep going, Max. You know, don't give up. He was still ahead of both McLarens, wasn't he? So they're still quicker. Red Bull in various key moments of the Grand Prix. And of qualifying. So just keep going. You don't know what's going to happen. Austin, I would say Brazil and Qatar and probably Abu Dhabi will be more McLaren tracks, but Austin can absolutely be a Red Bull track.
I think we're seeing the Max that we saw in his sort of World Championship, well, the years that he's won the World Championship in the last 4 years, where he's hard on the team, and on the radio he's going for them. He wants them to be better and constantly improving, which I think we've missed out on that a little bit earlier this year, where he kind of just accepted in certain instances where the car wasn't quite there. He was maybe more accepting of it because he felt maybe they weren't within a shot of the World Championship. Now he's back to how he was before. And yeah, his radio messages I thought were quite telling in that sense in Singapore. And yeah, the charge is now on for him and for the team. They need that. They need this push and they need this kind of hunger for it.
Yeah, but Yuki didn't step up again. Took a step backwards, didn't he, Ted?
Yes, I mean, he didn't have the new front wing. It's not known whether he would have liked it. Obviously, we can't know. There was only one of them. But having understood some key parts of the car, both in qualifying and the race, he wasn't able, for various reasons, to deliver that. Let's give Yuki, and Red Bull will give Yuki a few more chances. Well, Red Bull will give him to the end of the season. But before we judge whether he's made that step forward in Baku was accurate, let's see what happens in Austin in a more usual. And he got a duff start as well, dropped well back. So let's give him one more chance in Austin before we make a call on whether the Baku improvement was a flash in the pan or not.
Unless the call's already been made. I get the feeling, and the early whispers are, you might get 2 new drivers in Racing Bulls next year. Jamie, would you heard anything on that? Do you feel that they might do that?
I think they might, and if they do, I think it's very obvious it's because they are constantly looking to try and find the next Max Verstappen. They don't want to find the next sort of number 2 drivers, or just a driver that can be solid, across the board. They want to find drivers that are these kind of, superstars in Formula One. And I think if they, in my opinion, just keep the same lineup as they've got, then they know that those 2 drivers aren't going to be Red Bull Racing drivers. They aren't going to be drivers that will ever sort of, they accept that they're not going to maybe match Verstappen, but ever be within, a tenth or so of Max, which is what they really kind of need. So are they better off just trying something new, putting someone new in, a younger driver, a fresh driver, and they might find, like they have with Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls. The thing we don't know is, we know what Isaac Hadjar is like in the Racing Bulls. How is he going to fare in the Red Bull? If he comes in and he is also off the pace, like we've seen the last sort of 3 or so every driver that's gone up against Max recently, then there's the fundamental issue there. But if he comes in and he's right where they need him to be, then they constantly need to be trying to find these young drivers to put in the Racing Bulls, develop them up to ultimately go into the Red Bull Racing seat.
Are you not going to go with the Alex Dunn story for our nice listeners, Simon? I thought that's where you're going.
I was wondering if you were going to do that, Ted, because
you might as well do it. We all know that's the story.
Oh yeah, okay.
There was a good story going around. We don't know whether it's going to happen, that Alex Dunn, having been released from his young driver program of McLaren, is going to be picked up by Red Bull, and whether that's going to mean that Arvid Lindblad takes another year in Formula 2, and that it's Alex Dunn and Liam Lawson in Racing Bulls, keep up, next year, and that it's Isaac Hadjar, as Jamie says, with Max Verstappen, and that Yuki Tsunoda goes to Aston Martin. Phew. As a third driver. So, Alex Dunn.
Yeah, it was
Helmut Marko.
Big but on it, though, he doesn't have a super license. And he has to finish top 3 in F2, I think, to get a super license. So although he fits the mould as the character of driver that he is, and he's aggressive and he's fast, and on, when you switch on the F2, he's always there and he's always exciting. He's not had a consistent year, and he's in his rookie year, to be honest to him, but it means that he's not got a super license. So if they can actually physically take him, that's the other thing. It might not even be an option.
I mean, we understand that actually Warren Hughes, who runs the young driver program at McLaren, really, really rates Alex Dunn and thinks that, he might be a huge star in the future, and it'd be great to have an Irish driver on the grid. Of that, there is no doubt. But watch this space, as we said. Lots of rumours floating around the paddock. It is that time of year, and that is a couple of seats, or 3 of 4 seats within the Red Bull family, which is absolutely not dictated, but it does look like Isaac Hadjar might be moving up alongside Max Verstappen in 2026. Right, Ferrari. And let's talk Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Old teammates, lovely rivalry. Let's go back to 2007. And then, of course, there's this expletive-laden tirade by Fernando Alonso as he's chasing down Lewis Hamilton, who's cutting every single corner in the book. Gets a 5-second penalty for exceeding the track limits on multiple occasions. And then we see this Instagram post from Lewis Hamilton, which has, you're probably too young for this, One Foot in the Grave, Jamie, and Victor Meldrew, I don't bloody believe it, on repeat. Thinking that he's a grumpy old man and he's moaning. But did he have a point? Should Lewis, with no brakes and driving in the way he had more than a 5-second penalty, should he have been black flagged for that? What do you think, Jamie?
I don't think he didn't have no brakes. If he had no brakes, he would have been in a whole world of trouble. I think Lewis shouldn't have cut the corners. Categorically, I think that's probably worth more than a 5-second penalty, because he probably gained more than 5 seconds with the corners he was cutting. If he could safely have brought it across the line, which I think he did, apart from the fact he was cutting the corners, i.e. not, causing Fernando big issues, whatever, then that's one thing. I think Fernando's playing on the point that, there's certain other things that have to be in check to pass scrutineering, whether it's a mirror, you get black and orange flagged. If those parts fail, then, he should have been disqualified, and that should have been that. But I do find Lewis's sort of reaction to it quite funny, because even Fernando, in his age, he just is so, even the way he was talking about Isaac Hadjar and the racing, his radio messages, he doesn't age at all in those senses. He's like one of the young kids in that sense. So I like the excitement from Fernando. He's still hungry, he still wants it, but I mean, Lewis was a lost cause. He got the penalty in the end. Not his fault with the braking issue. He shouldn't have cut the corners, and that was that, in my opinion.
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Simon? Two things on this. First of all, they all need the points. It's not that Aston Martin need the points, which Fernando got with Lewis's 5-second penalty. It's not that Aston Martin need the points more than Ferrari. Ferrari need the points to be second in the Constructors, a battle they're currently losing to Mercedes. So, while I think Lewis would have been cool about Fernando getting the place back, given that Lewis is bound by these overheating brakes. The other thing I think is significant is that in the middle of the Alonso rant on the radio, he remembered that Lewis got away with the speeding up under the red flag.
Yeah.
And coming in and the attack the pit lane message in qualifying. So where is it? I can't find it amongst all the I cannot believe it. I mean, I cannot believe it. I mean, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. Blah, blah, blah. And then further on, he said, he sometimes they disqualify me with no mirror and everything. And then he says, yes, it was the red flag. Here we go. I mean, no. Sounds a bit Little Britain there, isn't it? I mean, no respect for the red flag yesterday. Today, free track for them, too much. So Alonso in that radio message is still remembering that he thinks that Lewis got away with not having a red flag infringement by speeding back up and going into the pits. So switched on, never let it lie. And wanting to advance himself. But that's why he's Fernando Alonso. And that's why he's, one of the best that there ever was. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Charles saying it's going to be a long end to the season. Lewis going on about how he's proud of the team and wants to help deliver the results they and the Tifosi deserve. I see the progress we're making, the hard work that goes into every race, but this is Ferrari. Progress alone is not enough to achieve greatness. We need to go further, be better. There is so much we can achieve together, and if we build on our successes and change the things we need to do, I fully believe we'll get there. Forza Ferrari, but it won't be in 2025. It'll have to be 2026, or that lineup might change, I should imagine. Let's finish on a couple of special mentions. Carlos Sainz at Williams, that recovery drive from the back row to earn a point after a bad Saturday for Williams and that disqualification from qualifying. Yeah, Sainz doing his best from where he was, starting-wise, to build on the podium from Baku, Jamie.
Big time. Went very under the radar, especially at the end. I think we all sort of didn't realise how he actually did it. But in reflection, really nice strategy from Williams. I think a difficult race strategy-wise because there weren't any interventions or safety cars, which would have made their day a lot easier if there were, because it would have given more opportunity. Instead, just stuck it out for a long stint and then put the soft on at the end when he was able to cut through the traffic quite nicely as well and make a couple of moves in a race that seemed like there wasn't much overtaking. So, very well deserved, both from a pit wall point of view, but also a driving perspective as well.
Yeah, brilliant from Sainz. After an embarrassing disqualification for Williams with the rear wing DRS flap being too far open. Shouldn't happen to any team, not least for a team with hopes for being a top team like Williams. Great strategy, great driving. I don't know whether he tricked Isaac Hadjar at the end, but Hadjar let him go, thinking that he was going to stay within his DRS detection zone and then get him back. And then Hadjar just completely misjudged it and didn't realise that Sainz was so far up the road on the soft tyres that he had no chance of getting him back. So I think that was one of the reasons why poor Isaac Hadjar was a bit annoyed with himself on Sunday, as well as on Saturday as well. So yeah, they really good tyre management and showing that the podium, I think that probably felt, well, maybe not as good as a podium, but from the back of the grid after a disqualification, getting a point would have felt pretty good for Williams. They deserve it.
And just ahead of him, Ollie Bearman. He's had one of those seasons. He's been 12th last couple of occasions, and he's been 11th 4 times. But 9th, he put together a weekend that he's been trying to put together and is trying to achieve that consistency. And it seems to be coming, as we said, rookie errors early on, but he's learning. They all seem to, these youngsters coming through. They learn very quickly. Exactly.
Rookie errors, but you cannot take away his speed all year, to be honest. He's been very, very impressive. Putting a weekend like Singapore together is not easy. It's quite nice seeing him after the weekend. He was on my flight home and he was saying the first hour, I think, after he got out of the car was tough physically. I think after Singapore, your first Singapore GP, I don't think he'd experienced anything like that before, but very impressive. And I think you look at Esteban Ocon, who he's up against, no slouch, as Jensen said earlier in the weekend, beaten a lot of very good teammates, and Ollie's come in and proved himself. But I think also Ollie will have one eye on that Ferrari, still in that he's still in the driver academy, and he will be looking in the future to know that's where I want to go. I want to go to Ferrari. He's a bit of a George Russell in that sense at Williams, I think. So I think he's definitely got eyes on bigger picture, and if he keeps performing like this, I think in the next few years he's got a good opportunity.
Yeah, interesting what you say about how it was his first Singapore, and he felt, about an hour after they were just all recovering. And when they were sitting down in Parc Fermé, it clearly took a lot out of the drivers. But did you think, Simon and Jamie, that they've got it sussed now? The fact we had no retirements and only one spin from Nico Hülkenberg, do we think now, it wasn't the most thrilling Grand Prix, do we think F1 drivers now have Singapore sussed and that they're not losing concentration and making silly mistakes, and we're not seeing these crashes and nobody retired? What do you think?
I think they're operating at such a high level now. That's why you see less mistakes. I think the more F1 races you put in a year, the more dialed they get, the less mistakes they seem to make. I think if you had Singapore race 4 or 5 of the year, then I think it would be a bigger challenge. The cooling vests, I think, made a difference, not for all the drivers. Some of them, I think for Lewis Hamilton, it failed maybe halfway through the race, but you still have half the race of using the cooling system. And I think it's a bigger focus. I think it shocked the system of a lot of drivers previous years, where they prepare very much for these hot races. They do a huge amount of training for the hot races. The cars as well, the teams put a lot of emphasis into cooling. Mercedes have had issues with cooling for the drivers previously. That's become a centre of focus. So I agree with what you're saying, Ted. I don't think it's now become necessarily easy. I think it's still incredibly tough, but I think it's become now a focus. They cannot let themselves slip at these races that do get a little bit tougher.
Well, it was George that kept his cool all weekend. Jamie, when are we seeing you next?
I will be in Mexico.
Brilliant. We shall prepare you for that. You'll have finished. By the way, by the time we see you, actually, you'll have competed. You'll either be a champion or you won't.
Exactly.
So we'll go to Portimao next week, isn't it?
Hang on, a champion again. She's already three-time world champion, Simon.
Multiple champion. Jamie, just talk us through that. What do you need to do in the final race in Portimao? That's next weekend, right?
It is. So there's 6 points between us and the lead. So effectively, win and become champions. Don't win and potentially don't become champions, but we'll be giving it our all and let's see what happens.
So if you do win, tequila session in Mexico at some point.
If you say so, Lazenby. If you say so.
Yeah. Okay, Ted and I, we know some places.
I bet you do.
I'm not there, sadly. I'm not in Mexico, but I will buy you a caipirinha and a steak in Brazil, Jamie, if you win. So go for it. Be more Lando Norris at his pushy best, and then in qualifying, be more George Russell.
Okay.
Yeah, we're behind you.
Thank
That's
you.
what I'm trying to say. Good
stuff.
Thanks for your company, both. That's it. We shall see you in Austin and then Mexico as we get busy for the end of the season. We'll see you then. From us all here. Bye-bye.